since we both cock it up normally.
I can do it.
Go on then. Good luck.
Do you have to do the slap thing?
No.
Cool. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name is Clayton, and I just nailed the intro. Hello, James. How are you?
Well done, mate. That's such redundant now. My name's James. Hello, everyone. I hope you're well. I hope you enjoyed England Friday night. That was exciting, wasn't it?
I didn't actually see it in the end. I had tickets to go, but I couldn't go. So.
Oh, did you not go?
No. So literally, I was meant to leave at 5:38, and at 5:30, I had a call from some shit going on. So within 8 minutes, I was like, I had to can it. So yeah,
you were lucky.
Yeah, it sounds like it was.
Mate, it was the first game of football that I watched following on from Chelsea and Man City's 4-4 draw.
Oh, okay.
The disparities.
I don't even know what the
between
score
them two
was.
games.
I've been under a rock. I've literally.
You don't even know what the England score was.
No, I've not had a chance. Genuinely, it's been a bit mad.
This is the bit where I go, can you believe that we drew with Malta?
Yes.
Oh my God, okay. For those who also were under a rock at the weekend,
I'm guessing we didn't draw.
England won 2-0.
Okay.
It was pretty shocking. It wasn't the big news from Friday, though. That was Everton's staggering 10-point deduction. I say staggering because it did stagger at first when the news come through. We're not going to cover it on this pod, because me and Sid are going to do a whole podcast on it tomorrow. So we normally do a podcast on Patreon on Thursdays called Money in Football, where we look at a related topic that involves money in football. And we're going to bring that forward publicly this week and do it tomorrow because it is such a huge story. So we're not ignoring Everton's point deduction. We're going to do a whole podcast on it tomorrow. What are we doing today, Clayton?
So today I have prepped a few more stats for you. And it's for an individual player from every club. And we've done this, was it about a month ago? Was the last international break?
Yeah.
So last international break, we did an episode where I had a stat for James from every club, and he had to guess who the club was. Today, we've gone a further level down, and it's a player from each club. And like I said, it should be 20, but for some of them, I've given you a couple of stats from each club.
Is this all FPL relevant?
No.
No, that's fair because it's probably difficult to get relevance for all 20 teams.
There are some FPL relevant ones, but I found it more fun looking at wider stuff for conversation.
So I think it's more like, I think people quite enjoyed the podcast we did during the last international breaks. It created discussion points, and I'm guessing that's the aim of this one as well. Exactly. All right, it shows yours, mate. Off you go.
Right, so not going in any order. Just going to throw a random stat out there and let's see if you get it.
I doubt it.
I think you will. All right, let's go for a nice, easy one. Who has had which player the most non-penalty XG and XG in the Premier League?
Sterling, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
but
it's got to be.
When I was doing it, I didn't think he'd be top for non-penalty.
He's had some monster ones in away games, hasn't he? West Ham and actually the recent two against Manchester United and Chelsea have been big for him. Yeah. Partly because he's had penalties in those two away games. So, I would have been surprised if it wasn't Haaland.
Who do you think was second and third?
Mo, I would have thought is one.
Yeah.
And it might be Mbumo.
Yeah. So, I don't know who was third, so I don't know why I asked that. But Salah was second, then I thought he was top, so that's why that surprised me when I was actually checking.
We would expect Haaland to be top of that, wouldn't we?
Really? I don't know. Again, I think I've just not been paying too much attention to statistics this year.
Look, from a fantasy perspective as well, at the value he is, at the fact that he's getting a point less per goal than Salah, for example, and obviously doesn't get the clean sheet bonus either, he needs to be knocking up those kind of underlying metrics to make you want to go there, basically. Now, I think if we reflect, probably going back sort of 4 or 5 weeks or so, I think he probably was behind Mo, and that's when people were really beginning to say, look, what are we paying 14 million for at the moment? Yeah. He obviously didn't play for Norway last night against Scotland, pulled out with an ankle injury. He is flagged at the moment currently in FPL. Romano Fabrizio, tap-in merchant, as he's well known these days, rather than reporter of exclusive journalists, he's tap-in merchant. Did say, however, he came out and said he'll be fine for Man City against Liverpool. Okay. So, no concerns. And I'll be captaining him this week, unless, obviously, it's the 12:30 kickoff. So, unless there's obviously news, sugar, he's not in the team, then, there's a rethink. Yeah. And we might look at some rethink options during the course of this podcast. But my intention would be captaining him this week as a non-Salah owner it's definitely captain for me in game week 14 against my team. With no Romero, no Van der Ven. 15 is debatable when he goes to Villa. 16 against Luton and 17 against Palace, he gets the armband. 19 and 20, he gets the armband. I'll be wildcarded in 19 anyway. So he's justifiable for me. 15's probably the only one that's questionable. I know there's a lot of debate about captaincy this week. And I've said this on my stream on Friday. I think as long as they're fit, I think Haaland and Salah are the two best choices this week.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Despite even ahead of Son.
Yeah, even despite the fact they're playing each other.
Wouldn't go Son ahead of.
It's interesting. I think there's like a camp of people at the moment who are considering selling Son. There's another camp considering captaining him.
I'm in the latter, yeah.
Jared Bowen is... I said, we might have a discussion about it. We just get into it now. Jared Bowen at Burnley, but obviously he's pulled out of the England team playing in North Macedonia tonight, but it could be a minor. We don't know the circumstance. He's not expected to play and he's gone, can I go home and spend some time with my family because he's got a newborn recently? It could be anything, right? Yeah. Who knows? Maybe it is legit injury. We'll find out. I think he's probably under consideration for a few people. Probably not Arsenal assets at Brentford. Probably not Newcastle, Chelsea assets against each other. I think Ollie Watkins is reasonable, actually.
Really?
Playing against that Tottenham defence, yeah.
Yeah, fair. Yeah, that's not a bad show, actually, thinking about it.
So, but the more you kind of go around in loops, looking for alternatives, is anything actually good enough to go against a Haaland or Salah when Salah's got a really good record historically against City. Haaland hasn't scored against Liverpool yet, but he's only played them once. That's City record anyway. I don't know if he might have played against them for Dortmund. But I think he hadn't scored against Chelsea till the last game week either. So that City home game is one I never really want to argue against. On Son, I get it, because it's the obvious Villa high line, Son's timing of his runs / pace. Yeah, there could be some gold in there. But if Lo Celso didn't play, you'd all regret it, would be my take.
As simple as that?
Yeah.
Do you think Lo Celso will play?
The distance between forwards and midfield would be too big. I mean, I say you'd regret it. I think Andrew'd regret it as well. Yeah. And that's not to say, Lo Celso is going to open up or dominate the game, or at least just a similar profile of player to Maddison. He's obviously nowhere near the level. We know that, but at least he'll be someone's got near him.
Yeah.
I'd be really concerned about that personally if he went to captain Sonny. Could he go off? Yeah, sure. I also think Ollie Watkins just as capable.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Okay, interesting. Little segue, because you kind of touched on it, but which player is in the top 3 for chances created?
Created?
Yep.
Well, Maddis is probably in there, isn't he? Yeah.
So he's top 3, and I think obviously that's a nice little talking point, considering what you said about the gap between the midfield and the attack, and how much do you think you're going to miss him?
Oh, massively, of course. Like, you can't replicate. They can only be different. I kind of referenced last week saying about, Tottenham didn't replace Harry Kane. No, you can't. No. Right? You're not going to find that player. It doesn't exist.
You just restructure.
And certainly away from a transfer window, Tottenham aren't going to find a James Maddison replica. So you need to try and do something a little bit different. And I think probably the break would have come at a good time for Tottenham in the sense that just breathe and reflect on things a little bit. It won't have helped. Lo Celso's obviously been with Argentina, whereas you'd have probably hoped he'd spend the whole 2 weeks with Ange, and I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back injured. That would probably be the rubber luck at the moment. But actually, he notoriously does seem to come back from international breaks with the odd niggle. So, no, you can't replicate that. And again, I think for fantasy, it relates back to Son. And it was just interesting after the Wolves game, narrative seemed to already be burning about. I said this to you, people going, Son can't score without Maddison.
Yeah, and it's like it's been one game.
Well, it's one game, right, exactly. And yet here we are a week on and people going, I think I want to captain Son. Yeah. Make your mind up, which camp do you sit in? The reality probably sits somewhere in the middle, right?
Yeah.
If Sonny can get the chances, he'll score. If you look at some of his recent goals, the goal against Palace, which comes from a cutback, the goal against Chelsea that was disallowed is across from Johnson, across the box, is ever so narrowly offside. The Fulham goal comes from the centre-back being aggressive and winning the ball.
Yep.
So not necessarily directly just from Maddison. Like, he can get chances from other areas. And with him, it's all about, can he get the chances? Because he can finish. That bit's not really in doubt. And I think he'll obviously feel the sense of ownership over this period for Tottenham that he's got to provide. In the
Yeah,
past,
he's got
it
to
might have
step
been,
up,
I've
yeah.
got to provide for Harry Kane. It's like, I've got to provide for this whole team now in terms of the output. So, like, he certainly remains, obviously, Tottenham talisman over this period. In terms of Maddison's miss, yeah, it's huge. I think that the big thing that will be noticeable, even if Lo Celso plays, is Maddison's work of movement to find the space is exceptional. That's almost as good as his ability in terms of his actual range of his passing, etc.
Yeah.
His ability to move off the shoulder of someone and drop into that left half space and find his yards by just movement.
Noticed that a lot in the
He's
North London derby
brilliant.
as well, when I thought we pressed you well, but then it was him that was finding really clever pockets of space where people didn't know where to track him.
Left half space, brilliant. And obviously, if you play against a team that's only got a single pivot, if you go and man mark him, he'll just take you right all the way out.
Yeah, he'll drag someone else.
Let someone else take the space, essentially, etc. So yeah, huge miss. Yeah. Huge miss. I don't think he's the biggest one at the moment, though.
You think it's Van der Ven?
Yeah, I really do, because that impacts the way the whole team plays in terms of the recovery pace, etc. His recovery pace is so phenomenal that you can get away with a lot of stuff. He's a little bit like Kyle Walker on his lapses of concentration.
Yeah,
so,
although I don't feel like Van der Ven has lapses in concentration. Well, not that
no, but the team can take more of a chance.
Yeah.
And Kyle Walker knows in himself, through his own body, he can take a chance because his recovery is extraordinary still. So you're not going to get away with it now in the same way. So that's the bigger problem.
Yeah.
The bigger problem is the loss of Van der Ven. Yes, creativity is obviously not going to be the same for Tottenham. I do think, as I said last week, Lo Celso probably will play against Villa. I would be really surprised if it's like Højbjerg, Sarr. Obviously, Basuma suspended against Villa.
Yeah. What do you think it will be right now then?
I think it's got to be Højbjerg, Sarr and Lo Celso. I don't think Bentancur's quite ready to be starting yet. And also not under the pressure of, if he was going to go into the team now, I'd want him to play that 6 role till he got himself up to speed. You can tell he's a couple of yards short, which is understandable. So the only two really, I think, can fill the void for Maddison, which you can't fill, but kind of try and replicate the role in terms of at least the structure, is Lo Celso or Jamie Dunley, who's a young boy who's been doing really well for the under-21s, but it is obviously a massive step up.
Yeah. Fair play. Right, we're going random for the next one. So, don't look at my phone. Look at my notes.
As if I can read that.
Right, so there are 2 players in the Premier League that have had 12 blanks when starting. Just 2. So they've started.
Say that again.
So there's been 2 players that they've started 12 games and they've had no FPL returns. So 12 blanks.
No return.
Not a single return.
Is this like defenders and clean sheets, or is
no comment? Yeah, it has to be. But. Even an offensive,
no returns.
An offensive player with no return either. So there's 2 players.
I'm trying to. They can't. I was drawn to Brighton because they haven't kept a clean sheet.
So I'll tell you. I'll help you out when you name clubs. They're not from Brighton.
No,
2 different clubs.
There can't be a Brighton player that's played all 12 games.
Yeah, true.
By the way, Andy Naylor, who's the athletic correspondent for Brighton, said this morning he thinks Matoma won't be available this week against Nottingham Forest. So that's possible transfer out loading for me during the course of this week. No, can't be Brighton. Is anyone else hasn't kept a clean sheet? Sheffield United?
It's not Sheffield United, but you're close.
like Sheffield Wednesday? Obviously not. Like how close is close?
Close in the Premier League table. So
Burnley, Everton.
One's Luton. And then I'll give you the other one. The other one's
Nakamba has got to be one.
That's it. One's Nakamba.
Nakamba, yeah. Is it another Luton player?
No, the other one's Villa.
Villa?
Yeah.
12 games, not a single return. Kamara?
Yeah. How'd you do that?
Well, it's just a natural one that would play that same position as Nakamba, isn't it?
So, yeah, they're the only 2 players, outfield players, that have started all 12 games, not a single return.
Is that right?
And obviously, Nakamba was well, I think Kamara as well in the conversation around 4.5 fodder.
They're both very important players for those 2 teams. Nakamba, we knew, we cover him quite a lot on our Sky Fantasy pods. An important player for Luton. Kamara's conducting a real important role for Villa at the moment, which is allowing them to use both fullbacks to go forward. He's dropping into kind of a right back position that allows Cash to push on. McGinn goes from the right midfield position into central. They'd played Yuri Tielemans, seems like. I didn't see a lot of the game. Played on the left-hand side in the last game against Fulham and played really well. Looked like it was kind of his first real emergence performance for Villa. So Yeah, Kamara's a real important player. He plays a lot of them at Villa play a different position with the ball and without the ball. He's a good ball winner as well.
Yep.
He's not someone you'd expect to contribute from attacking returns. Kamara doesn't sit in anybody's FPL teams. I'm sure Nakamba
He's probably knocking about in a
sit
few.
in a few because he was 4.5 at the start of the season. So he's never someone you'd start.
No.
Even when Dan Ashby came on with Jack before their double, even Dan was going in with a double. Like, don't play him.
Yeah.
Like, he's probably 2 points.
Yeah, it's literally, in a double, 4 points is fine.
No, 2 yellow cards, he was thinking, to be honest. So I think he's close to a suspension as well, Nakamba, which, whenever that game falls, will be a positive for whoever they play. So, for example, they go to Brentford in game week 14. So if Nakamba's not available, it would only improve the prospects for the likes of Mbumo, Vissa, or good morning, Tom Med, Neil Morpay would probably play in that fixture if you like that sort of shit.
Nice one. Well, I'm impressed you got them. Okay, next one. So Everton have the most tackles as a club in the Premier League this season. Which player has won the most tackles for them? 32 tackles won.
The natural answer should be Idrissa Gana-Gueye, but I'm feeling it's not.
It's not.
Is it James Garner?
Nope, but close.
Amadou Onana?
Nope. Mate,
How many other players can rhyme?
This will blow. This blew my mind. You get 2 more guesses. I feel like you'll get it in 2 more. Yeah, you have to. It's half the team.
It's not McNeil, surely.
Nope.
He does work hard. Tackles won.
Yep. 32 tackles won.
Mikalenko?
Yeah.
Is it really?
I know. I was like, what?
I have to say, when we covered the podcast last week, and we obviously discussed Palace Everton, it was pretty harsh of us not to mention Mikalenko, who's scored and assisted against Palace, and we just didn't even acknowledge it, admit it, considering as well he'd scored against Brighton a week before as well. I'd say that's probably not one to be chasing from an FPL perspective, personally. Like, if you did want to invest in Everton defensively, I think you'd still just go for Jared Branthwaite at cheaper. But I think Mikalenko has probably now established himself for Sean Dyche.
Yeah.
The volley he had at Palace was very reminiscent of a volleyed goal he scored at Leicester a couple of years ago. So he's got a bit of a technique in his locker. His crossing is not terrible. And obviously he's got into the box really early on for the headed goal. So that's decent. Most tackles won as well. I mean, it won't help. It won't not help from bonus point perspective and stuff. I suppose if they have clean sheets, that's one for the above average boys, because I know they covered a BPS section on their stream last night. I haven't seen it, so I don't know if he was mentioned or not. I doubt it. I'm going to say no, probably wasn't.
Well, that's the next question. Who's had the most bonus points this season then?
It's Trips, isn't it?
Yeah, okay, so you did watch the stream.
No, I didn't. It's just one of them I know.
Yeah, he's got 15 bonus points this season. So when people were talking about paying the extra, I know it's only bonus points, but that is what you get with him, right? And more routes to points as well.
I still feel like it's the same as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago with Trips at the moment, that it's like people who own are like, oh, this is maybe a way I can find money. They've got lots of injuries. Should I come off? And there's others who don't own it. Like, how am I going to get there? Because Newcastle's run's really good. So it's a narrative you can spin either way. I'm a non-owner at the moment. You?
Yeah, I'm a non-owner.
Are you looking to get there, or?
Yeah, I just don't really know how. I think, well, no. I think ideally I'd like him, but because I'm tripled up on Son, Haaland and Salah, for me, that was the sacrifice I had to make.
Yeah, it's more one for me, wildcard in 19. I'm looking at sort of 17, 18, Fulham at home, and 18, they go to Luton, don't they? And looking then and going, if I've got the spare, something like Saliba to Trippier for those last couple, maybe, might be something that I'd consider possibly. So, you know what it is with him, if they keep a clean sheet, there's every chance because of his chance creativity and stuff.
He'll be in the bonus, yeah.
Exactly that. If he gets an attacking return, it's not 3 points for a Trips assist, right?
No.
It's normally worth like 4 or 5 if he's getting an assist. So you always have to remember that with him. Still a good asset. I think rightly one of the most expensive defenders in the game. If anyone's on, I think my take at the moment is probably like if you're on, keep. Especially this week where the fixtures for defensive players aren't good. And you've got a good asset who can return offensively, keep. And similarly, if you're not on at the moment, it's not a panic to go there. I'd give yourself some breathing room to see what's happening with not just like Botman. We think he's possibly close. There's been mixed messages over this break. So there was a report that said basically if he has a setback again, he'll need an operation, which was sensationalised to say Botman needs an operation,
Right, okay.
which wasn't the case.
Yeah.
We think he's possibly close to returning. But Fabian Schär didn't play for Switzerland either.
Okay.
He picked
Injured
up a hamstring problem towards the end of the Bournemouth game and missed the Switzerland game, and we're not quite sure on the status of him at the moment either. So it might still be minutes for Big Tasty, even if Botman's back. But it might even be that. If Botman and Schär's back together for that sort of 17-18 period, if I've downgraded, I don't know, hypothetically, Saka to Palmer, then I might even be looking at sort of Lascelles to Trippier for the game week 18.
If Schär is injured and obviously Botman's out,
that's very concerning.
Yeah.
We think Almiron and Isak will be fit, by the way.
Okay.
And Isak, I think, will draw attention quite quickly now. There's a couple of reasons for that. I think Alvarez, I don't want to say underperforming, that's completely incorrect. I've got Alvarez, and for those who've still got, it's calming, let's say. But he's producing fine at his value. Ollie Watkins is coming in some tougher games. So I still think like Tottenham away this week's fine. But then you might look at, ironically, Bournemouth away might be tougher for Watkins than Tottenham away. Then it's City at home, Arsenal at home, Brentford away. Then they have the really good fixture against Sheffield United in the blanking game week 18. And you can arguably say captainable Ollie Watkins in that game week. But I think there will be a consciousness of people looking at who've got Watkins might start after this week thinking to Núñez after Liverpool have gone off for City, but also Isak, because we think Wilson's going to be out for around about 6 weeks.
Oh, damn, okay.
So that will take Isak up to 18. The problem with that is, obviously, is he going to be able to play twice a week? And it's not just the Champions League. They've got that Carabao Cup quarter-final as well, which is the Tuesday before they go to Luton in 18. So, but I'd imagine if he can stay fit, Alexander Isak will play through the middle and do really well over this coming period. He's kind of coming into my thoughts now.
Okay,
because
nice.
I've always said, haven't I, like, if one of them gets injured, look at the other one.
Yeah.
And it just worked out that Wilson couldn't really work for me with the last few, and I didn't think the fixtures were particularly great. And now it's flipped where Wilson's out for 6 weeks and Isak's got a clear run at it, but he's obviously doubtful himself for this Saturday. I wouldn't buy this week. What would help, I think, as well for Isak, if they lose in Paris and the other result goes their way, then it might look highly likely that they'll finish bottom of the group.
Yeah.
Now, if that's the case, they might take a view to go, right, Isak's playing the league games, sod the last Champions League game, sod the Carabao Cup quarter-final. Yeah. That would maybe help, and now Isak down to something more interesting. But even, like, they go to Everton in 15, which is the Thursday night, then they come to Tottenham in 16. Now, you'd think he's definitely going to want Isak to play at Tottenham.
And then
does he play in the more attractive fixture at Everton in 15?
Well, so like you say, Everton.
Bearing in mind, like Romero will be back for Tottenham by then, so it'll be a little better.
True, but then do you know the three that are after that?
For Newcastle, yes, it's Fulham, Luton, and Forest.
Yeah, like that is a ridiculous one.
So if we're looking at 6 weeks for Wilson, and we probably have to backdate that a week, we're probably talking about New Year's roughly.
Yeah.
So for those who've used the wild card as well, Isak, even going into Boxing Day, is probably really good. That said, I also know what their fixtures afterwards are well, and then it gets tougher.
Exactly. It's Liverpool, City, Villa away then.
Yeah.
So, tough one. But good to know Isak's on the radar, because he's someone that I'd be looking at as well.
He's one. I mean, it goes for both of them, Isak and Wilson. I don't know the exact numbers, but I'm sure if you were looking at XGs per 90 and stuff, both of them are right near the top.
Yeah.
In terms of per minute, so
they always are. Statistically, when you filter, I always see them.
Alexander Isak really needs. I don't think it's a buy this week, but it's a really keep a strong eye on, I think.
Sure. Cool. Right, we're gonna go and take a little break because.
Why don't you tell everyone why?
I may or may not be trying to get tickets for Arsenal v PSV in Eindhoven, so they go on sale at 10 o'clock, and I have to go jump on and get them. So we'll be back with part 2. Is this a Planet FPL first? Have you guys ever done this?
No, literally, there's going to be like 2 seconds of silence, and then I'm going to say, did you get your tickets?
Calm. Well, hopefully it'll be a yes.
Did you get your ticket?
I did. PSV away. Here we go.
PSV away.
Yeah, secured the bag. Secured the ticket.
Nothing game of football because you'll already be qualified. Probably after Group 1. Yeah, but you'd already booked your flights and shit. So I
booked my flights and accommodation about a month ago.
Good. Enjoy Eindhoven.
Thank you very much. Staying in Amsterdam, so that should be fun.
Amsterdam. That reminds me.
It's
one time.
Anywho, we had just finished talking about Newcastle, and the next one is related to my team, who I've just secured the tickets for. Who has had the most successful final third passes in the league this season?
I'm guessing it's an Arsenal player.
Yeah.
Successful final third.
Yep.
I'm going to throw out a controversial Declan Rice.
Interesting. No, it's not.
Saka.
It is Saka, but what was your thinking behind Rice?
Because I know Clayton likes a bit of field tilt.
I do love a field tilt.
Declan gets through a lot of completed stuff in terms of recycling side to side and stuff like that. That was also Saka has more ball involvement than most wide players, so it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So Bukayo Saka with the most successal final third
in your FPL team, Saka.
No, I've only got Gabriel at the minute.
You keep saying, and you did our differential show with Suj while I was sucking on hot lemons, feeling like shit on Friday.
Where that was going for a second.
By the way, sucking on hot lemons actually is completely because you wouldn't suck on a hot lemon. Has anyone ever sucked on a hot lemon?
Nah, but I want to try it now.
I was drinking on hot lemons on Friday. But you said again on that podcast, you're not really interested in Arsenal offensive players.
I'm not, no. I said this, I think it was the last main pod we did, last international break, and obviously people were looking at Sheffield United coming out, Burnley, and I swerved it. Martinelli would have been the one that I would have gone to had my structure worked, but I really like our defence. I want to double up on our defence, if anything, and potentially have one of Saka or Martinelli.
The problem with doubling up on a defence, and you look at the next three, that's fine. But then once you start looking at Villa, Brighton, Liverpool, 3 in a row, that double defence isn't going to look. Villa and Liverpool's away as well.
I should have caveated that wasn't with the intentional going in now. It's more like if I'm thinking long term for the season, what do I want? Double Arsenal attack or double defence? It's double defence for me. Just not there with the attack, and even we just have to find different ways to break teams down, and it's not quite free flowing like it was last season.
So if you were wild carding now, and you wanted to go free Arsenal, what would you go like? Saliba, Gabriel, Saka.
Yeah, that's what I would do, or Martinelli, like either or. But.
So I got Martinelli before game week 12, punted it for the 4 fixtures.
Yeah,
not happy with it.
Yeah, I can understand why.
And he's going to stick with, if Matoma's going to be out for the weekend, I think I'd been looking at that to Mbumo. One of them two to Mbumo probably anyway. Not necessarily for this coming week because obviously you play them. But having that ready for what I spoke about, like that Brentford-Luton fixture in 14, then they've got a good run before their own blank. And Mbumo's underlying data is very strong.
Yeah.
So Martinelli's probably going to stick for me up till that Villa fixture. But I'm not thrilled about it, I must say. And I keep thinking about you playing Wolves the Saturday and then Luton the Tuesday in 14 and 15 and thinking,
thinking rotation.
Trossard's going to start one of them. Jesus is back fit. We know he played for Brazil. And Ketcher's obviously presumably available as well. I'm going to guess.
I don't actually know. I don't know what the latest is.
It was a minor issue that kept him out of.
But I've not seen any official comms on it yet, so I'd be lying if I said I have.
But then you're nearly back to your full complement of offensive players, which obviously includes Kai Havertz at left back, which we'll be covering for Advanced Tier patrons on Talking Tactics this week.
Looking forward to that one. But that's on the Martinelli thing, it's not the sort of player that you kind of bomb out of your team, but this is what I've been consistent on. I just don't think Arsenal attack is good value this season, and we're enough game weeks in now to see statistically it adds up as well. As a team, they're not creating the amount of chances that I want to see from an FPL lens.
Talking of lens, nice. So you play Brentford Saturday.
Yep.
Lens game is what? Is it Tuesday or Wednesday? It's Wednesday.
Next Wednesday,
So you are going to play Lens Wednesday, Wolves Saturday, Luton Tuesday.
Yeah. There will be rotation. Yeah. I'm just not sure when or where it will come in.
But Saka will play all of it, won't
it? Yeah, of course. Yeah. And then he'll go off, and then
it'll be yellow flags for all of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And then Arteta will lie in his presser, and everyone will have a meltdown. And, we'll repeat
Saka. I feel I've looked at options. I keep looking, and as a non-Salah owner, I keep obviously looking regularly at different alternative ways of maybe getting him in. And you do think, well, maybe Saka could be a sacrifice at some point. But he does almost feel like more than anyone, I think, and Suj uses the term all the time, and I really hate it. It's, set and forget.
Yeah.
But Saka does feel like just crack on with it and just let him be and just go with him. A
term you might better like, which Late Riser uses a lot, is glue guys, rather than set and forget.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, because I prefer that to set and forget as well. No offense, Suj. But yeah, he's the glue guy, right? You just kind of stick him in, tick along, and then you can focus your transfers elsewhere.
There's a joke there about Suj and glue, but I think we should move on to the next player.
Yeah, let's move on. Okay. Anyway, next one. Which midfielder that isn't Mohamed Salah has made it into the FPL Dream Team most times this season? The team of the week?
Yeah, nobody is. Thanks, Clayton. Give me 1 second
Insight.
to think about the answer. I'm going to throw out a random here. Douglas Luiz.
Oh, no. But that is clever thinking.
Mbumo.
Yes, Mbumo, 3 times.
Okay. Is that it?
Yeah, I know. There's been a few of them.
Well, I suppose. 1 every 4. That's pretty good, actually.
Yeah, it's not
to
bad
be in the team of the week. So
yeah, when I was having a look at this, there's another question later on a defender as well. But there's not many people that have been in more than 3 times, to be honest. So.
No. Is he in your team at the moment?
He is. I think I've had him all season. I don't think I've not been around.
I feel like he's one I'm happy to put my hands up and say I wouldn't say make a mistake, but I've not owned him this season.
At all?
And no.
Wow.
And I spoke a few weeks ago, maybe a bit longer, maybe even during the last break, saying I was quite comfortable with that decision, actually. That performance he put in the West Ham game really spooked a bit.
Yeah.
It was like, I knew I'd got away with that. Like, he got 5 points out of it, and he should have had a 1 in front of that 5 as a minimum. Like, he really should have hauled in that fixture. And he passes eye and stats.
Yeah.
So when you've got a player who passes the statistic metrics and you really like what you see from him as well, you look at his value and you go, yep, perfectly reasonable for a talisman, for a team that's going to finish mid-table. He's on pens. Like, there's more to like than kind of asking you, why am I not going there? And I think for me, there was concerns at the start of the season that I knew that they wanted to buy another attacker.
Yeah.
We knew they wanted to get Bakayoko from PSV. That caused some concern for me, not for his place in the team, but just where does he sit in this moving forward? Then they didn't, and then that also convinced me to think, well, they haven't replaced the loss of Tony, so when they play with someone through the middle like Morpay, is that going to be their solution? Like, no, I don't like this. But what I've seen, has now convinced me that I probably need a part of it. And as I kind of already alluded to, if Matoma's going to be out this weekend, there's a case, even though they're playing Arsenal, that's the player I want. I had penciled in my mind previously Maddison to Mbumo in game week 14 prior to Maddison's injury. So am I going to get a second problem in midfield and still ignore him? And if I ignore him this time, then I probably really am ignoring him going forward, because I want to start rolling transfers and stuff. I know he's going to get a lot of attention, I think, after this weekend before the Luton game.
Yeah, but like you say, if it's someone that you're going to have for that stretch, might as well just
we'll talk about differential captains this week, and there maybe being a bit of a split in terms of what people do. If Mbumo was playing Luton this week,
you think he'd be in the captaincy shout?
He'd be right in the conversation.
Yeah, I
think next week with Salah's got Fulham.
Yep.
Saka's got Wolves. Haaland at home to Tottenham is probably less reason to be moving away from that sort of thing. But if Mbumo had Luton this week, I think that'd be quite popular amongst the community, actually.
What do you think about, obviously, they blank in 18, right? So, because I said to Suj on Friday's differential show, I'm still not really planning for the blank yet. I'll probably get to that around game week 15 and start making moves. So for people that are thinking...
Suj will start thinking about it like the day before.
Well, he sounds like he's thinking of it already.
Considering game week 18 has a Thursday deadline, is very dangerous.
He's screwed. But yeah, for people thinking of going there, would you be concerned about the blank or just deal with it nearer the time?
Depends what you've got, right? So, I mean, I can't imagine there's too many out there would have too many outfield options. I don't think many are going to have free City at the moment. No. So your most is probably Haaland plus Alvarez or Haaland plus Foden, that sort of combination. There won't be many have got your Diaz's and stuff like that. Brentford, I don't think there'll be any Vista ownership's probably gone.
Yep.
Morpay's one. If people have got, they'd be using as kind of a 15th player almost. There might be a few that have got, say, Ethan Pinnock as an example. But the chances are people who might have had, say, Rico Henry probably sold and went to a different team rather than Brentford. Remember at the time as well, they weren't in the best run.
Yeah.
So I don't think too many will have that many. So if you take me as got Haaland, Alvarez, if I obviously had Mbumo, that's 3 outfield players.
Yeah.
And that can,
that nearer the
yeah,
time.
but it depends on your setup. So if you've got Haaland, Alvarez and Mbumo and your bench is Kabore, Nakamba, Morpay, just an example. Archer's the better example, right? Then you're carrying 6 players that are probably no use to you in game week 18. Whereas for me, my biggest problems would be like, oh shit, I don't want to play Saliba or Shimikas in the Liverpool-Arsenal game. But then if I get to 18 and I've got 2 free transfers, or I'm even happy to take a -4, which it probably would be, then I don't think it's too much of an issue. Particularly as well knowing that I'm going to wild card straight afterwards. There is a debate in terms of whether you should take a -4 for a 1 game week, but if I was generally there and had a crap bench like that and had Mbumo, Haaland and Alvarez, and I was taking a -4 for like, I don't know, hypothetically, Salah, Watkins, Isak,
then it's a different story.
Then I'm thinking, I'm going to take the -4 as an example. So I don't think it's a huge problem.
Cool. Nice one. Right, next one.
That said, the other flip of that is obviously I'm thinking that with my head on in terms of I've got the wild card.
Got your strategy line.
Those who haven't maybe would want those 3 players in 18.
True.
19, sorry. Especially if obviously the City Brentford double happens, which
when have you forecast?
We are getting to the point where we're beginning to ask a question. I think if we're sitting here in 10 days and we're about to start game week 14 and there's no announcement, we have to start asking the questions if it is going to happen or not.
Okay.
And I don't get what the reason to wait is anyway.
This is where my memory's failing me. When did you forecast it to be initially?
January the 3rd.
Okay.
Which would fall into game week 20, game week 20, sorry. And it could go to midweek after, like this January the 10th, and it would still be game week 20. But in terms of travel and stuff, I don't know, thinking of Brentford fans and that, and even the time of year, I don't know what the reason to wait is. I think there might be a case to say City won't want the fixture. Club World Cup, the games, they might go, would rather have it later. But I think that happened with Chelsea a few years ago. And remember Chelsea had that dirty backlog, would end up playing game week 36. And by the time it worked out, it was kind of irrelevant. Played like Man United in like game week 36, didn't they? And then another double in 37. And it was really tight. It looked like at one point it was going to have to be like a treble game week. I think it was United maybe coming out of the Europa League, kind of enabled it really late on. Otherwise it was probably going to have to be a treble game week. And City wouldn't get themselves in that position, but they will end up having to play the Brentford game during one of their last 16 free midweeks of the Champions League, for example. So what I would say is, just as a caveat, if obviously it doesn't happen in game week 20, bar the fact City go to Newcastle, I don't know if you want to pull up Man City's fixtures, bar the fact City go to Newcastle in game week 21, their fixture run is really good until an awful 4-game stretch in March, basically. Just want to run through City's fixtures from 22 onwards.
Yeah, so after Newcastle away in 21, it's Burnley at home, Brentford away, Everton at home, Chelsea at home, Bournemouth away, Man United at home, and then it's Liverpool away, Brighton away, Arsenal at home. So that, from Liverpool, game week 28, 29, 30 is where it's Liverpool, Brighton, Arsenal.
Yeah, and then we've kind of identified off that maybe wildcard 31 to come back into City for the run-in as well, the second wildcard. So if it doesn't happen in 20, it's still likely to happen somewhere over that period.
Yeah.
The other notable on that, and therefore it's still likely to be a very good double, and you're in the middle of a good Manchester City run of fixtures where you'll probably want some of their assets. The interesting on that as well, though, is one of the games you mentioned there is Brentford, game week 23, I think.
Yep, game week 23, Brentford.
And the likely for the rearranged game is probably 24 or 25.
Okay.
So it doesn't really make sense to be holding on, because then you might have that shit like United Leeds where they end up playing each other twice in 10 days or something, which is crap.
Yeah.
And I know game week 23 is obviously repeated from game week 18.
Okay.
So the 18 fixtures are reversed in 23. I'm pretty sure that's for all the teams. Might not be all of them. So there's teams obviously playing each other twice in, say, a month. But there's a lot of fixtures in between that month.
You're right. Just had a look.
Rather than looking at, say, a 10-day gap there, for example. So 20 is still likely, but I think, with each passing day, it's becoming less likely. I'd still be sort of 90%-ish that it'll probably happen. But I don't think we could be sort of 99-ish anymore, anything like that. So I think, if we're sitting here next Friday before game week 14, there's still no announcement, and then we're within the 5-week period of announcement, then we've got to start thinking maybe this isn't happening.
Yeah, okay. Cool, nicely summarised. Next one. Which player, and I'm very intrigued by your answer on this, which players had the most offsides this season?
Most offsides. It was a bizarre one. That Chelsea City game last week there wasn't an offside till about 5 minutes to go in the game.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed that game.
Despite the fact, obviously, two teams were intent on trying to win a football match, which helped the spectacle. Most offsides. It's going to be someone. I was going to say it's normally someone. I was going to say I don't mean this disparagingly, but it normally comes off as someone who's lazy, someone who just doesn't work hard enough to get into position. I'd seen those sort of players at Tottenham over the years. I thought would have said the most offsides. What's the bloody relevance of this, Clayton? Is there a relevance to this?
Not really. No, it was just something that I had a very clear answer in mind when I thought of it as a stat.
And is it that person?
No.
Who was the person you had in mind?
No, I'll let you guess first.
Most offsides.
Okay,
I take it as someone who regularly starts up front,
yeah,
right, through the middle.
Yeah.
It's got to be.
It can be a relevant conversation.
It's not Sonny, is it?
No, it's not Sonny. Who's the?
I was going to say someone like Calvert-Lewin, but he ain't played enough.
Who's the person you?
And Calvert-Lewin's not lazy either.
No, not at all. Who's the
Antonio? Is it Antonio?
No,
it's
not Antonio. Begins with an A though.
Some other arsehole, obviously. Begins with an A. It's not. All I can think of is Areola. That's not really helpful at this moment. Go and help me.
Taiwo Awoniyi.
Taiwo Awoniyi.
So who was the player you thought I was thinking of?
I had Chris Wood in my head as
really?
well. Yeah,
no, I thought it was Nicholas Jackson.
Oh, Nicholas Jackson would have been a good shout.
That's it there. And the reason I stuck him in was the reason I stuck that stat in was...
He's too busy getting booked.
Oh, you just ruined the next one.
Telling people to shush.
Yeah.
I still love that. I don't know. I think it was a Patreon pod I mentioned it on last week when he was trying to push Sterling to the Man City fans to give him some stick after he scored. And he's like, leave me alone.
Yeah, just chill. But yeah, Taiwo Awoniyi with the most offsides in the league this season. What do you make of him as let's go FPL asset?
He's been spoken about. There's two names in terms of forwards getting a bit of attention. It's a good one to bring up, actually. Awoniyi and Dominic Solanke. The two are getting a little bit of attention.
They've got a decent run.
Yeah, and I think it's... they play each other in 18 as well, Forest and Bournemouth. And I think there's that. Forest have a good fixture beforehand, and Bournemouth's run of fixtures kind of from now to 18 is not bad for a talisman like Solanke. His underlines are good. They're what you would expect from a good talisman forward for a team that's been struggling and arguably better than that. And they walk into Sheffield United next, right? So I completely get why people are looking at that. So, as an Alvarez owner, you could move to Solanke. It's not one that's a consideration for me at the moment. That's not to say I've got no interest in Dominic Solanke. I wouldn't say that at all. I'd more want to be finding my funds for Nunes or Isak.
Yeah,
I think at the moment now would be my take. Maybe not for this week, but afterwards.
Any love for Awoniyi? Got Brighton at home, Everton
not so
at home,
much.
Fulham away, Wolves away.
Not so much. I mean, he obviously had a real hot streak at the end of last season and the beginning of this season. He's obviously had a little bit of an injury-interrupted season now. That does feel like it's cooled a little bit. I think also his underlying is not bad either. I would prefer Solanke of the two, purely as well because there are options for Forest there with Wood, Origi. They can always, for a more difficult fixture, look at something like Alanga and Gibbs-White in at the top of, say, a 5-3-2, whereas Solanke, you know exactly what you're getting. There's no way he's not playing. Almost none from their perspective. Out the Carabao Cup as well, obviously so are Forest. But I would prefer Solanke, and it's a general conversation as well in terms of coming into this December period where it does get congested and you start thinking a little
They'll
bit
flex
more.
the squad a bit more there.
Yeah, and I could, even from that perspective, I could get why someone would pick a Solanke over, say, a Nunes or Isak, which might have a little bit more explosiveness at the moment, because you know you're going to get the minutes out of him.
Yeah.
And he could sit there for you till game week 18 and it's fine. So out of the two, I would prefer Solanke over Awoniyi. But they're both reasonable options, both getting attention.
Yeah, and that's a nice segue because the stat I had on a player from Bournemouth was Solanke. Out of all of the teams from 30th to 20th, he scored the most goals with 6. And just above them.
Out of all the teams from what, sorry?
13th to 20th.
Oh, I thought it's the 30th.
No.
I was going to say, Man City ain't been done yet.
From the championship upwards, he's but yeah, like 6 goals is in a team that has been struggling. I know there's a couple of pens in there, but...
There's also the recency bias of it as well at the same time.
He
scored twice against Newcastle. If he'd not scored against Newcastle, would people be talking about him in the same way? I
probably
don't know.
not. No.
But it still was timing-wise, is Sheffield United next. Like, I get it. Yeah. I owned him quite a bit last year, around about this time of season, actually. And he performed pretty well for me.
Yeah.
It's consistent as.
Yeah.
And he will be. He won't be... If anyone gets him... you might end up disappointed, but you're not going to end up with 2.
No, there will be returns in there.
Yeah, he will. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice one. Cool. Well, one that you touched on. Who's had the most yellow cards this season?
Is it Jackson?
It is Nicholas Jackson with 7.
How many of them not for dissent?
I don't know. I would like to see that.
I think he's
reckon
one,
it's...
I think. Is he on a 7 or 8?
7 yellow cards.
That's unbelievable.
That's ridiculous.
For a forward.
Yeah. I just had to find a way to get him in this.
He has come across...
Do you rate him as a player?
I think there's something there. Yeah, I do actually. I think there's games I've seen him where I thought, your movement's good, and there's other games I've seen where I think, you're a bit off it here.
Yeah, I can't make up my mind
Get
on
yourself
him.
into position a bit quicker.
Because we said this earlier.
I
in
think
the
that
season.
might come down to confidence, because I think in the opening month of the season or so, I think it was just a case it wasn't really going in, and people were going, he's a decent player here. And we shouldn't put him in the bracket of some of the forwards Chelsea have had historically, because although 35 million or whatever they paid is it's not like a packet of crisps, but it's not the top level. You know, when you're paying for a forward at that price, you're not getting...
Yeah, the leeway is a bit less, isn't it?
Yeah. So I don't think there was huge expectation on him to necessarily come in and be Chelsea's number 9 as the long term. I think he's performed...
Obviously the injury to Nkunku.
He's performed fine. I do think he is probably the likely make weight for Nkunku. But I also reflect on what Chelsea fans keep saying is the link between Jackson and Nkunku in pre-season was really, really good. The difference between now and then, in my opinion, is Cole Palmer.
Yeah.
Palmer's almost put himself in a position where, I don't want to say undroppable, because...
That is the word that comes to mind right now, though.
Again, there's 2 teams. I mentioned this on stream Friday. Liverpool 14 to 16 have got a real rough turnaround, in the sense it's Sunday, then Wednesday night, then Saturday lunchtime. And Chelsea have the same 18 to 20. And we should be conscious of that, there's a lot of, Reece James, I'll be there game week 16 and stuff like that. That's fine. Reece James probably isn't going to play 18, 19 and 20. No. And that could apply to nearly every outfield Chelsea player.
Yeah.
And because the fixture's so good, you're never going to want to bench it unless you physically know that you're going to want to bench it. Now, other than the 20 fixture in Luton, because it's the 12:30 kickoff, you ain't going to get any insight into the teams, because they play on Christmas Eve, which is 3 days after the deadline in game week 18. So you ain't even going to get a press conference probably. And by the way, that goes for the majority of teams in game week 18. Because of the Thursday deadline, you're not gonna get press conferences. And then 19 is similar. You ain't gonna get a lot because it's Boxing Day fixtures, and who's doing press conferences and Christmas Day and stuff. Like, you're not. And for those like Chelsea who play on the Wednesday night in that week, probably have their press conference on Boxing Day. So you're not going to get any info in terms of team news, etc. So it's something to bear in mind, and that goes for the majority of teams over Christmas. But there's definitely going to be issues there for Chelsea 18, 19, 20, where other than Robert Sanchez, I don't know, we could look at any player and go, they definitely play all 3 of those games. On Jackson, I think he may be the make weight for Nkunku, and I think he's a major player to keep an eye on. I did a list of differentials for some of our patrons last week for Christmas specifically, and I kind of put him top of the shops.
When's he due back?
So he could be in the squad this weekend.
Damn. Okay.
I would be amazed if he started at Newcastle, but it almost feels appropriate if you're looking at investing. You know, we're well aware of the Chelsea swing from game week 16-ish. Although it's worth saying, other than winning their opening day last season, I think their historical record at Everton isn't brilliant, by the way. But from Everton 16, but you could also make a case from Brighton 14, right?
Yeah.
Especially for the offensive players. Exactly. Does United away in 15 hold major fears?
No. I don't think so.
Not really. And actually, the spacing for those ones is a little bit better because you go from United on the Wednesday night to the Everton game is on the Sunday. So if Nkunku's on the bench at Newcastle, then I think it just becomes a timing thing and just finding out where he's going to play. That fella, I'm absolutely certain, wherever he plays, will score goals.
Yeah?
Absolutely certain.
So you're pretty bullish on him then. So the minute he's playing regularly...
I'm not necessarily bullish that he'd be like an auto get for FPL, but I'm bullish that I know that he's a very good footballer and he will get attacking returns. He's got the smell of it.
Okay.
I owned him in UCL Fantasy when he was at Leipzig last year, which included a hat-trick at the Etihad. Like, when he gets in position, he can finish, and he's got that kind of sixth sense understanding of the position to get into to find the chances.
Yeah. Okay. Well, speaking of sixth sense, which player has hit the woodwork the most times this season?
What's that got to do with sixth sense?
You'll see why.
Which players hit the woodwork the most?
Yep.
I feel like it should be Mbeumo. They separated at birth goalposts from Brian and Mbeumo. It's obviously not Mbeumo. Guess the team?
Liverpool.
It's got to be Nunez.
Yeah. My man with the sixth sense. He's always in the right positions, but he is the enigma.
I love him. I think he's brilliant. I think he's great.
Yeah. So
I can't get through a sentence without... Oh, Mr. Chaos.
Like, yeah, I had another stat around Liverpool as well, which was Salah has had the most double-digit hauls in FPL this season.
It shouldn't come as a surprise, no. It's highly likely to be him or Haaland, right?
Yeah,
so.
And obviously the theme there is Liverpool's attack, right? And they're just, I mean, you say you think they will challenge for this title, don't you?
Yeah, look, I think if we're clubbing Liverpool and Arsenal win with City, which is right to do so at the moment, it's obviously injuries are going to be important, and I think even more so for Liverpool than yourselves, in all fairness. I mean, there's a few key players Liverpool would struggle if they got injured suddenly. Van Dijk, I have his critics, but it would be a struggle if something happened to him. I think he's been good again this season largely. Szoboszlai would be a major hole problem.
Yeah.
Honestly, almost more important. You say, Salah's king and all that, and of course he is. I get it, but you can still go with a front line of like Jota, Nunez, Diaz, like it's Gakpo, whatever. Ben Doak, young player, people keep talking about. There's still options there for Liverpool. You take Szoboszlai out of that midfield, and I'd be really concerned. Really concerned for Liverpool in terms of their aspirations for the season. Scored 2 really important goals for Hungary to get them qualified the other night as well. And I think that's something he can add to his game in terms of his goal scoring for Liverpool. But he's doing a great job in the midfield, multifunctional. Go on.
No, go on. I was just going to say, you mentioned earlier about potentially people moving to Nunez and stuff. Are you there with it?
Yeah, maybe.
It's the minutes though, right? As always. I feel like it's a broken record, the conversation. But
for me at the moment, the planning is quite easy.
Okay.
Because I know I'm wildcard in 19 and there's almost no chance of that changing for me unless I suddenly dropped into 5-6 red flags all at the same time. The yellow flags just don't bother me at all. If I walked into suddenly all at the same time 5-6 injuries, the Tottenham thing, then I might have to wild card. But I'm almost definitely going to 18, so I'm constantly looking at a plan that on each passing week is getting narrower and narrower.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at lots of alternatives, and I obviously keep looking at an alternative that's, say, Watkins to Nunez, for example, or Alvarez to Nunez. Mitoma's injury is probably going to make Alvarez to Nunez a no-go for me.
Yep.
In terms of a path route. Just that little shift in price. Whether I'd been Martinelli to Mbeumo, then maybe Alvarez to Nunez would have been easier. But it's also worth saying, I keep looking at 14, and I've got Haaland against Tottenham. For me, it's not even a debate on the captaincy. I won't want to sell Alvarez either for that fixture. And Watkins at Bournemouth. So I don't necessarily want to move that either. That feels like it's got to be the buy Nunez moment, though. 14. because Liverpool have that brilliant 3-game
Yeah.
stretch.
But how many minutes do you think he'll get?
How
in
many
that,
minutes
right?
will he get? Well, with him, you're probably looking at, I guess, 280s plus a 30.
A 30, yeah.
So
I'd say that's where I think as well.
what are we talking about there? 190? So we're talking, might as well call it 2 full games, basically. Now, because those 3 fixtures are so good, is that also enough?
Yeah, I know what you mean, and I probably would say yes.
Would you take, I mean, just put that into a bracket, would you take, let's call it 180 just for ease, 180 minutes of Núñez against Fulham at home, Sheffield United away and Palace away, or 270 of Watkins, Bournemouth away, City and Arsenal at home?
That is a tough question.
Yeah, but the fact that you and ah about it almost says, we'll just stick with the guy that you got.
I guess, but I like having fun. I kind of want to dabble there.
But also, definitely, I'm not having Ollie Watkins against Sheffield United in week 18.
Exactly.
So it's also, you can say, well, yeah, you got the benefit there. Yeah, but if I don't go there and I keep Watkins, that's 2 transfers that I can use somewhere else in my team to add more Chelsea for the switching fixtures, for example.
Yeah. Okay.
So, do I want Darwin Núñez? Yes. I'm going to want Alexander Isak, I think, as well. Yes. Am I getting both of them in? Next to no chance.
Yeah. Fair play.
Unless the big robot got injured.
Yeah. Then that changes the whole game.
But then I would definitely fix not having Salah at that point.
Yeah.
So then,
well,
ironically, I keep thinking, because I'm always of a consciousness week on week of if Haaland got injured, who's going to be your other player that comes in with Salah? And even the fact that they play City this week, I probably would go Núñez.
Have you not owned Salah at all this season?
No.
How do you feel hearing he's had the most double-digit hauls?
Like it's almost expected.
Yeah.
It's going to be him or Haaland, isn't it?
Yeah, because even Sid was saying on Friday...
Listen, if I wildcarded now again, I would go Haaland and Salah. I said this to Suj when he did it in the last international break or game week 8, whenever he did it. If I'd been wildcard, I'd gone Haaland and Salah, it's just never really worked for me. For me now, I could go, get it done. I could go Son to Salah, and I could go Martinelli to 4.8. Now, if I'm into Palmer range, I think it's not even 4.8. I think it might be a 4. I'd looked at another one. Yeah, it's 4.8, I think. Or if I went Mitoma to Mbumo, then it was a 4.4 as well. So I could still do it.
Yeah.
But it's just below what you'd want in terms of like your Palmer.
You want the Palmer, yeah.
Even just short of Bellegarde, I don't think is a terrible punt because Wolves have a good long-term set of fixtures as well. It just doesn't really work for me.
No.
And every time I look at it, I think, of course I want Mo Salah in the team. But it's like I'm putting Mo in on one shit player to remove 2 very good players.
Yeah, fair. So do you think you're going to be going without 14 to 16 then?
I think probably, yeah. And I know Suj said to you on Friday, he's like, I've got to sort it.
Yeah.
It's killing me.
That's why I wanted to ask you to see where your head was
I also don't feel that way in the sense that run he's had from game week 8, starting with the Brighton double-digit return, the 2 goals, every week, bar one, was the Luton game, like he's returned and scored, right? And every week he's returned, I've had a green arrow.
Oh, okay.
So it's not massively damaging me.
Yeah.
It's not, he's killing, but he's not.
Because you're getting points elsewhere.
I'm getting away with it, yeah.
Fair play.
And that's worth saying. If I had Salah over that period, then I probably would be doing even better.
Yeah.
Like, I realised that.
Oh, you were in
but
game
then
week 1.
I'm probably, for example, not having Son and Bowen is probably the sort of combination. That's what we're talking about. Do you want Salah and a McAtee, or do you want like Son and Bowen? And if I'm sitting there every week going, well, other than 15, I'm captain Haaland anyway.
Yeah, it makes sense. Different ways to skin the cat.
Yeah.
Right, next one. This surprised me, but which defender who isn't Kieran Trippier?
Who?
I butchered that name there. Do you know what? I was reading the name.
Kieran Trippier.
Kieran Trippier. Kieran Trippier. Let me start that again.
By the way, he's pulled out the England squad for personal reasons and he should be fine for the weekend.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Yeah. Which defender who isn't Kieran Trippier has made it into the dream team the most times this season?
Matt Cash?
No.
Saliba?
No. See, I told you it would surprise you.
Joachim Andersen.
Yeah. How'd you get that so quick after the first day?
They've had most clean sheets.
Yeah, and this
Palace,
was like
I think.
Palace
And he scored a couple,
defensively,
hasn't
and obviously you've had Johnston since the start of the season, I believe.
Yeah.
So Palace defensively.
It was right funny for me listening to you say, James and Johnston. So that's it. I'm sitting there going, Salah's not killing me. And you two are sitting there going, God, James is kidding us with Sam Johnston. It's weird. Yeah, I mean, they're decent and they've got decent run of fixtures, certainly for at least the next 3 as well. Go to Luton this weekend. Ironically, despite losing to Everton, it feels like probably the investment probably should have been there for them last week.
Yeah.
What have they got? 18 their fixture.
Palace got.
Problem is they've
got Brighton at home.
Yeah, so they've got
the derby.
It's the next 3, and then they've got Liverpool at home, City away, and then
it's not now to go in, but it's just more
the motorway derby.
Yeah,
no one's allowed to call it that. Sorry, guys. So then it's rough. So yeah, I mean, I'm looking at moving Johnston to Sanchez in 16. It's the exact.
I feel like Palace have gone under the radar.
What I might do though. What's Palace's fixtures from 19 onwards?
From 19 onwards, they have got Chelsea away, Brentford at home, Arsenal away, Sheffield United at home,
really,
Brighton away. So it's a tough run.
It's rough,
yeah.
But I was looking at, because I've obviously got value held in Johnston now, and he'll probably go to 4.7 over this period. I was looking at manipulating it, even in the sense that I didn't go Johnston to Sanchez. If I had the money spare and knowing that I wouldn't need it because of the blank and probably selling Haaland in 18. Going Turner to Sanchez and leaving Johnston about in case I'm going to pick him as a keeper on the wild card.
Okay.
To pair with something like Flecken if, say, the Brentford double happened, for example. So I need to have a deeper look at Palace's fixtures for the new year and stuff. But they've been what we suspected they'd be because of their lack of involvement in the market, a little bit more pragmatic than what we saw at the back end of last season. Just feels like, I don't mean this disrespectfully to Palace, but it feels like a nothing season for them. Like, I think Roy Hodgson probably won't be their manager next year, and yet he's doing an absolutely fine job at the moment. But it just feels like they're on hold as a football club at the moment. And I don't think that's necessarily terrible if they know what they want next year and can't get it now, for example, then I get it. And again, Roy Hodgson's doing a pretty good job, to be totally honest, with Palace. But it feels like they're on hold. I wonder, though, if with the return of Eze and Elise and the fact that they're well clear of danger, if they might begin to open up a little bit more the longer the season goes on.
Yeah, you think it was maybe because they've been without the attacking talent, they've had to...
I also wonder if one of those centre-backs might be under interest in January for a buy.
Yeah, it could be either of them, right?
From a few clubs. I know Tottenham have got a long-standing interest in Mark Gay, but he ironically wouldn't walk in the team.
Yeah, because
of how Romero and Van der Ven are fit. And he's obviously going to want to play for England at the Euros. And from that perspective, he'd be better off staying with Palace.
Like even Anderson will have suited.
Anderson had been linked with Newcastle.
Okay.
Quite a bit in the summer. And I think that was because of concerns about Fabian Schär's long-term issues with injuries, and yet has largely stayed fit over the last 15 months or so. But I wouldn't be surprised if suddenly, I don't know, it's hypothetical. Let's say something serious did happen to Van Dijk. You know, could Liverpool look at someone like Gay? Like, I think they could.
Yeah, I think so. Makes sense.
And I don't think it would be a terrible investment in that sort of circumstance either.
Palace fans are not going to enjoy speaking about this or hearing about this.
No, but to be honest, I'm relating it to a fantasy and saying that I think there might be interest in one of those two players from other clubs in January, and therefore we shouldn't look at them necessarily as a long-term view of definitively being one of the best defensive teams for clean sheets in the league. Yeah. Like, I don't think Johnston's an outstanding goalkeeper, actually. I do think he's better than Dean Henderson. But even that, at some point, is going to come back under spotlight, isn't it, when Henderson gets fit?
Yeah.
So I would have a consciousness about them. I think they'll be better, obviously, offensively for Michael Elise's return on top of Eze's. And I know a few will look at Eze this week. They'll definitely with that Matoma news. I went in on him last week. You went Eze, yeah. There'll definitely be a few with the Matoma news. Or Matoma to Eze, yeah. It's not going to be for me, I don't think, because I know that I'll hit 16 and I want to move that on to something else. So unless I came to the conclusion that I went, right, I don't want Mbumo, I'll go Matoma to Eze to Palmer, something like that, which can work as a chain, like Palace into then Chelsea.
Yep.
but you need to be in a luxury position where you're really happy with your squad to do that.
Yeah.
So maybe those who wildcarded quite recently might be able to line that sort of thing up. And I guess if I was wildcarding this week, I probably would look to punt Eze, I think, yeah.
Yeah, well, went in a week early.
And probably a defensive one, yeah. I still think Gay over Anderson, by the way, it's cheaper.
How comes that?
Just cheaper. Yeah, it's simple as.
Right, Hammers. Next two, as a Sky Fantasy football player, I'm hoping you get in quick fire.
Pauline, yeah.
And?
And Lewis Dunk.
Correct. Moving on.
Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah. What were the metrics?
Most tackles won and most passes completed.
Done. Sorted. Moving on. Anything to add on them two, to be fair?
Well, they're both going to be big misses for their teams this week, possibly. We don't know the Lewis Dunk status yet for Brighton. He did send an Instagram post last Monday suggesting that he would... the fans could look forward to seeing him after the break.
Okay.
So maybe he will be available for this weekend. And he's one of the few at Brighton that you can put your hat on and go, yep, going to play regularly. He'll play 9 out of 10 at worst. It's probably more like 19 out of 20, to be honest. And that's all comps as well. Whereas the others doesn't feel like that, even down to the keepers we've discussed to death. Stupinan has obviously had the setback, and I think a few of us were looking at potentially getting him back in for this good run of fixtures. Although Forest away, Chelsea away isn't actually that inspiring at the moment. That's two tough away games, really. Then there's 2 home games, one of which is Brentford, which isn't easy, and then Burnley at home. Then I think they go to yourselves in game week 17.
And then the motorway derby.
Hi, we've got a guest live on the podcast. Do you need some help?
Brainstorm. Like, do we reference it or do we just go straight back into the... Oh, yeah, no, we were talking about Stupinan and obviously the fixtures that Brighton have got coming up. You were then speaking about how after a decent run, it's Arsenal away, then the M25 derby.
Yeah, cut all that shit, Nico. It's terrible, right? Just let me... Use it. You listen. From this, you've got a collection of fuck ups. Literally, that you can have.
Is that the first time that's ever happened? Someone completely random just walking in.
It's definitely sometimes the first time someone's come in who's old enough to be my grandmother has done that.
That's rude. She's a lovely lady.
Okay, maybe only my mother. I might have exaggerated a little. I'm forgetting how old I am. I think Brighton assets though are just general no go at the moment. Because of this, it's becoming a headache. I've been looking, despite the good fixtures, that kind of weighs off of Mitoma anyway. So, despite the fact him being an amazing player, love him as a player. Daniel, start looking for money. It's just a headache. Ferguson apparently maybe got an issue for Ireland in the Netherlands the other night, and he thought, João Pedro again. Yeah, and it's just brain damage. Honestly, we're gonna have to, at some point just sit there and go, I'm just going to let these go. Yeah. You don't want to because you know what
they're capable
of. Expected offensively can be from them. But I just think probably whilst they're in the Europa, or at least when we get beyond Christmas, there might be a period we can look at in January and February, if, say, they win their Europa group, we could look at them maybe for January, February and go, okay, right, there's a little sustained spell here where they'll probably rotate in the FA Cup and stuff, and your likes of Mitoma might feel a bit safer and
stuff. They have got a really decent run from, January, yeah. Game week 21.
But at the moment, I just feel like for this, we're walking into a period anyway where all players, even your likes of Salah's, are liable to a possible rest. Those Liverpool 3 games, for example, could Salah be a sub at Sheffield United on the Wednesday or at Crystal Palace on the Saturday lunchtime? Yes, it's a possibility. It will depend on what Klopp gets advised from his people. And if his people say, no, keep playing Mo, he'll keep playing Mo. Yeah. It will literally come down to his fitness and his recovery and stuff like that. They won't take a chance with him, not with those fixtures. And they wouldn't anyway, I don't think. They wouldn't take a chance anyway. But we're getting into that period where we spoke about this with the likes of Solanke and why someone like that's maybe beneficial. You know what you're getting.
Exactly.
With Brighton, Fulham were without Paulinho against Wolves this week.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you should steam into Wolves players necessarily. No, not at all. But it does mean I would not be surprised if Wolves go to Fulham on Monday night and win, because it's a huge
He's
player
that important, isn't he?
I think
that's what I find incredible about the stat of most tackles, because he missed.
He's missed games.
Like, he's missed games.
Yeah.
And how is he top of that metric still? He's a freak.
He's a great player. Worth saying is his mistake that leads to the goal against Manchester United the other week, despite the fact he was the best player on the pitch. Yeah, look, he's going to get picked up. We've mentioned sort of Anderson Gay. I don't think Fulham fans are going to take this too badly to know that it'll get picked up by someone. Probably next summer now. The word is that Bayern Munich probably won't go back for him in January. And again, unless someone else in our league's got real serious concerns going into January, they probably don't add. Like, as good as he is, say for example, he probably wouldn't fit as for Tottenham.
Yeah.
Weirdly
because of the
enough,
style that you're looking to evolve to. That makes sense.
So I don't think there's too many would look for him necessarily.
I know what you mean.
January.
Elite teams don't really go for out and out destroyers anymore, do they? And that's not to limit him to what that phrase is, but
no, not really. But like, could he do a job for almost any team in the Premier League? Yeah, like that. If he came to Tottenham, would he be bad? No, of course not. He's great. Just probably doesn't fit into the style stylistically as such. I'm gonna guess that's part why Liverpool didn't go there. But you'd look at United's problems, you'd think, yeah,
like a younger Casemiro in a way it could be.
But I don't think isn't he like 28 or 29 or something now?
Is it? Okay, that's blown my mind.
I think so.
I don't know why I thought he was like 25.
Have a look at how old he is. I think he might be older than we think he is. I don't want to say late developer, because I can't say I've followed his career enough to know.
He's 28 years old, yeah.
He's 28, yeah. And listen, 28's not past it, right? But
he's the same age as me. He's 2 months younger than me.
Are you that young?
And I'm sat here.
God, thanks, brilliant. I'm nearly old enough to be your father in a weird world.
Right, Dad.
Did you hear the podcast we did recently? It was over the Patreon last Monday.
Which
one of the questions
Q&A?
we got in the Q&A was...
No, I've not listened to it yet.
You never watched Only Fools, did you? You're too young.
Yeah, I used to watch Only Fools.
Do you remember one when Rodney had to pretend he was like... It was a kid. It was on holiday. Anyway, one of the questions we had was, would me or Suj go on holiday if it meant we had to take you as our adopted child?
What did you answer?
We were like, no, anything but holiday.
I'm a great child.
No, we said we'd do it. Yeah, no problem.
Nice. Right. Anything more to add on that?
I think, by the way, Fulham will be fine. It's obviously Everton have been sucked into that issue at the bottom of the table now. There's 5 teams there that are almost definitely going to finish below Fulham, I think. So even if Paulina did go in January, I think they'll be fine. They're largely avoidable as well, though, from a fantasy perspective, because who's going to score the goals from
Harry Wilson,
Jimenez can, Harry Wilson. Jimenez can refine himself. I did notice that Decordova-Reid per minutes is all right, I think. But like, he's in competition with Wilson, and I think Willian is almost definitely first choice most of the time. So I mentioned him because he's really cheap in Sky, which is irrelevant to this podcast. What else you got, Clayton?
Right, we're going to the goalkeeper department for the next 2.
Yep.
Most saves in the league this season.
Most saves is it Wes Foderingham?
It is, yeah, because they just get absolutely peppered, poor guy. So 57 saves he's had to make this season.
So that's approaching 5 a game, isn't
it? Yeah, they're under the cosh quite a lot. And then the next one, which goalkeeper has had the most high claims this season? And it's 11 more than second and third.
High claims?
Yeah.
This is catching crosses?
Yep.
Kaminsky?
No, but I would have guessed him as well. And he's not even second or third.
James Trafford?
Nope. This really threw me.
Go on. It's not Vic, is it?
No, Jose Sarr.
Okay, yeah, that does make sense.
Why does that make sense?
Because he always does well in FPL. Ironically, Jose Sarr. Hence the expensive price tag, because he gets way more points than the defensive players. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me that Wolves end up dealing with crosses. But I also think they're quite comfortable with that, with the likes of Dawson.
I was just going to say, is that something they just let that happen? Obviously, Sheffield United don't choose to let the amount of shots on goal that they face. I think they're just not very good.
Some teams do. I mean, it used to be like an old Burnley tactic with Nick Pope,
Pope,
force them to shoot from distance. We trust the goalkeeper. It's fine. And people get frustrated against teams like that and then start resorting to doing so. That's not what's happening with Sheffield United. I think, mentioning those two teams, there was a couple of bits on both. Bulldog is 3.8 still, I think. I think most people who own him will start him this week because the assets look shit defensively this week.
In other matchups, yeah.
Tottenham playing Villa, Newcastle playing Chelsea, Brentford playing Arsenal, City playing Liverpool. That's conceivably the top 8 bar Manchester United, isn't it?
Okay, so what's your,
Brighton,
in air quotes, controversial... So you would play Bulldog over which controversial player this game week?
I probably wouldn't.
Okay.
With what I've got. So my intention, and it's dependent on injuries, obviously, but I'll probably go Cash, Saliba, Udogie this week.
Yeah.
Saliba because you can trust in Arsenal to pick up a clean
Especially
sheet
away
at any
from
time.
Home. I think Arsenal defensively are pretty good.
Yes, clean sheets do tend to appear more away from home than at home. We should reflect on the game at Newcastle, and there's a moment there where it very easily finishes 0-0.
Yeah.
And the other two I just picked for the offensive this week, Udogie and Cash. And I've obviously picked Son and Watkins part of that. I'll just throw them all in.
Yeah.
And it'll be 2-2 and all 4 of those players will score. Like it could be that sort of thing. Unlikely, but normally I don't like playing offensive players against defensive. But my alternatives to avoid that this week would be like Shimikas at Man City and Lascelles against Chelsea, which...
That's where you feel like you
Yeah, but Lascelles just feels like it tops out at 6. And I'd rather pick the 2 players. I think they might be suffer for him offensively anyway. If I get to the weekend and I think, Newcastle got their full team, I fancy him for a clean sheet, then I'll probably play Lascelles.
Yeah.
I'd obviously pick Trippier over these people. I'd probably pick Cher over those people as well because there's more offensive threat. With Big Tasty, it doesn't really feel like that. Q goal now.
Yeah,
never
literally.
score 1-0 15-pointer, sure enough. On Wolves, I do think Bellegarde is really worth watching, actually.
How much did you say he is?
I mentioned him a couple of weeks ago, and one unnamed FPL content creator messaged me to tell me that I was a genius for tipping him up. I was like, yeah, I tipped him up, but I wasn't going to actually go and buy him. And he didn't even start. He came on as a sub and scored against Sheffield United.
He's 4.9.
Yeah, and what did I say about one option in terms of moving Salah was to get a 4.8.
Yeah.
So I've been looking at players in that, if he did drop in there, because their fixtures are good enough, and I can see the way they're playing system-wise now, subject to Neto's fitness, I can see him potentially playing just off of Cunha in quite a supportive role.
Bellingham, isn't he?
And then maybe Neto and Hwang either side could get really offensive. There's a knock-on potential there for Ray and 8 Nori owners maybe to be conscious of. But I think he's an interesting one to keep an eye on. There's something there. I could. Obviously, I was at the game at Molineux last week. Yeah, he's got something about him, Just get a vibe for someone sometimes. I think it's worth keeping an eye on.
Okay.
Like if you need to look at an enabler that's under the 5 bracket now,
you feel like
and
you're
not
looking
right to the bottom, he'd be under consideration for me.
Okay. Did you hear Serge talking about Thomas Souček on Friday?
I did, and whatever.
Yeah. Anyway.
Although I had heard a rumour this morning, Antonio hamstring maybe.
Oh, damn.
Which would support that. What price Souček?
I think Serge said he was 4.9 as well.
Is he?
I would need to clarify that. That's the price that's come to my mind based on our conversation.
I mean, to be honest, I couldn't.
He is 4.9, yeah.
I couldn't give you anything data to support buying Bellegarde over Souček, to be very honest with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Souček would certainly come into that bracket. And if Antonio is going to be out for a while, you can see him playing that role that's as more of a support. Me and Suj speak about it all the time. It's like you only want him touching the ball in the penalty areas.
Yeah. Well, I had to get Antonio into this podcast just for Suj. And the stat I've got is he and one other player have been subbed off the most times this season, 11. Who do you think the other player is?
I feel like Maddison and Son aren't a million miles away from that, actually.
I'll give you a clue. It's one of the bottom 5 teams.
Okay, thank you. This is one of them ones where you had to go scraping the barrel for a stat, yeah?
Yes.
Is it a Burnley player?
It is.
Amdouni?
Yeah, I like your thought process. So yeah, Amdouni and Antonio, and obviously that's a shame if Antonio is injured, but yeah.
He's got a lot of responsibility at the moment. Amdouni's subject to what the situation is with with Lyle Foster and his mental health, he's basically picking up the slack up front at the moment, and he's not giving off vibes that he's going to get enough. That the irony,
they got an okay run. Like, I know West Ham at home's tough, but then
the irony is for I'm sure Suj, if he was sitting here, would say this: Burnley have lost every home game. Jared Bowen's scored in every away game.
Yeah,
like it's Burnley wins it Saturday, isn't it? Like, it's written, and 1-0 as well. 1-0 Burnley.
Yeah, literally.
But after West Ham obviously play Sheffield United, one of the things we have discussed is like, look, if you lose both of those,
then you're in
then there's a conversation to have, isn't
it?
The irony is though, and again we'll do a full pod on Everton's point deduction tomorrow, but obviously Everton and Burnley now on 4 points if obviously the 10-point deduction stands, and yet I only really sit here and could see Everton getting relegated if two things happened. One is Everton walked into a serious injury crisis, i.e. you start losing players like Calvert-Lewin, one of the centre-backs, etc. And if Burnley sort themselves out.
Yeah.
Because I still don't foresee, with respect to Sheffield United and Luton, I don't see how Everton won't get more points than those two teams over what remains.
Yeah, I'm in the same...
I still have something that nags that tells me that at some point Burnley will put something together.
I saw periods in the Arsenal game. I was physically down. I was like, their patterns of play are good. And you saw them against your lot start of the season. And granted, I haven't watched them week in, week out. But the periods I have seen, you can see tactically there is something there. And there were periods in our game where, granted, they didn't create chances, but I felt uncomfortable.
But what's there for them tactically is also causing them some problems because they're not as good as what the manager's ideologies are.
Yeah, they don't have the calibre of players to execute the
and
principles.
That's why I say, like, if they lost to West Ham and Sheffield United and suddenly, if you're a Burnley fan and you're going to every home game and then with respect to Sheffield United, you have then the weakest one come and you lose to them as well and you're 0 points from 8 home games, there is unfortunately then a conversation to be had about, do you want to take this forward and stick with it?
Yeah.
Now, my general take probably would be that as long as the players are still buying into Vincent Kompany's methods, and there's nothing to suggest that they're not, then they would probably be better off saying, well, if we have to go down and come back, then do it. Because the chances are, with some of what might be coming up from the Championship this year, maybe say Leeds, Ipswich, Leicester, for example, if Burnley went down, unlike with the other two, because it's not like they're going to go into the Championship and start spending millions.
No.
Burnley probably would be hot favourites to come back again. So they probably would be of the right status, I think, to stick to it. It's also irony, just in terms of a knockoff. When have we ever got this far into a season no one's been sacked?
Yeah, this must be pushing records now.
I think it is. Yeah. I don't know the stats and the data on that, but to get to... I mean, we're nearly December and not have a single
international break not
have a single manager lose his job.
Yeah.
I mean, we had obviously the change at Wolves days before the season started, for example, but that's it. So, but it doesn't even feel like anybody's like real teetering on the edge, I don't think. But that sort of thing could make Burnley think about their position. I would strongly think they wouldn't get 0 points from the next two. Amdouni is not worth a fantasy gamble. No one else at Burnley is, despite the good fixtures. If you wanted to invest defensively, I would still probably get Bayer now rather than Taylor. Just a little bit more security longer term now that Taylor's hit 4.0.
You'd recommend going there for something?
No, just if people want like an enabler. Sure. Like they've got Fulham away in 18. Like with Fulham's scoring issues, it's not a disaster if you had to play it, for example. The fixtures are okay up to then as well. So in terms of cover, yeah, fine. But then unless, say, Botman and Shearer are back together for Newcastle, how would you make a case to pick him over Lascelles, for example?
Yeah.
And there's others would even argue, even under that, wouldn't you rather have more trust in Everton and Jared Branthwaite, for example, despite more difficult fixture? You go, yeah, probably. I agree with that. But then you wouldn't want to play Branthwaite at Tottenham in 18.
No. You'd
feel a bit more comfortable with Bayer at Fulham. That's my point.
Yeah, makes sense. Right, final two, Hammers. We've got this player with the most headed goal attempts this season. I'll be disappointed if you don't get this one. Who was the club that spams crosses galore.
Oh, it's got to be Carlton Morris.
It is Carlton Morris indeed. The
do
hero.
like the cross, Luton. He's 5.3 now, and he was.
Would you consider it?
He's one I mentioned
12th
again
attacker?
for the patrons last week for over Christmas, in the sense that he falls back into that line of he'll play every game.
Yep.
No question about that. It'll be on pens. What's interesting about their fixtures over the Christmas period is they've got a really, really tough run of home games. But we've seen, in, say, the Tottenham, the Liverpool games, that I'm sure someone at some point will go to Kenilworth Road and win like 4 or 5-0.
Yeah.
But I've also been saying all this season that someone will go there and get unexpectedly beat. And that obviously was very nearly Liverpool a couple of weeks ago. But they've got some away fixtures through December and January that aren't bad. So if you're looking at home game tough, away game, I'd almost rather it was that way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You never feel comfortable that, I've got Morris at Anfield or I've got Morris at Etihad.
But
at least the home games are not,
I know what you mean.
so bad. And he's cheap enough that he can also fall into that line for your rotation if you want, where listen, if you went, for example, him and Palmer, then when Chelsea's fixture swing comes around, you're just going to play Palmer anyway, to be honest. It wouldn't be a terrible player. If you're looking to get a really cheap forward in and don't want to drop down to your Archers, your Semenyos, and you want someone that's going to play regularly, he falls into that line. And he might even drop a little bit more, which is obviously the legacy of the double game week that they had, right?
Yeah.
So it wouldn't be a terrible one. He's not someone I think you want to see in your FPL team every week. He does feel like he hasn't scored for ages as well.
Yeah.
But he'll chip in with a few.
Good old Carlton. All right, James. Final one for the pod.
I think we haven't covered now.
This player has had the most progressive passes in the league, and they were also, with James Maddison, in the top 3 for chances created.
Progressive passes?
Mm-hmm. And also top 3 for chances created.
Top 3 for chances created? It's got to be from a top team. What am I missing here?
Debatable. It's a top half team.
Is it a Villa player?
No. Just one below him in the table.
I'm trying to think who we haven't spoken about. Progressive pass. It's not Newcastle, but it can't be. They're above Newcastle. Who'd above? Oh, it's Bruno, isn't it?
It's Bruno Fernandes, yeah. Hence the debatable if it's a top team.
It's Bruno, yeah.
But this is like his metrics are because obviously everyone knows about how Man United are doing. Like we don't need to add anything.
Yeah, the most formed team in the league.
Yeah, literally. But
they've won 5 of the last 6.
Yeah, but again, the general narrative around them is completely. Well, it's been so mixed this season. And it feels like they've really gone up, down, up, down, up.
Yeah, I don't think there's a club I've ever known more that's more defined by their last result / performance. It is, everything is amplified double with them, more than any other team. I think even more than Liverpool. It is.
Why is that? The size of them?
Yeah, I think so. And obviously through the Premier League era, there's older generations remember obviously Liverpool's dominance of the 80s and stuff like that. But
it got to
of my generation, you just grew up in Manchester United's dominance, and for 10 years the only team that really got near them was your team, in fairness, Clayton. Yeah. Then obviously your likes of Chelsea and Mourinho come along. Then United recovered and had another dominant spell before Ferguson finished. It was like 20 years of being the top team, if you will, without question. And now they've had 10 years of for Manchester United, awfulness for their standards.
For their standards, yeah.
Which many other clubs would say we'd snatch for that, yeah, and I get that. But for Manchester United, it's obviously a terrible decade's worth of returns, basically.
I remember you were really early because I remember I was on the double Man United midfield, and I remember you just saying you can see it in Rashford, it's not there. And I feel like you went off before most people did, and you got it right, yeah.
I took a -4 to sell Rashford before, I think, Crystal Palace at home.
That was it.
To go to Son, who had Liverpool at home.
Yeah.
I'd seen enough of the two players. And it was Rashford against Burnley did it for me. And what was ironic about that is when you looked at Rashford's underlying from that game, it was fine. It didn't feel like it watching it. So, yeah, I'd seen enough. And I don't think he scored since.
No,
Has
I
he got
don't
one
think he
goal?
has. Yeah, he's.
I think the stat going about is his most shots for a player that's only scored once, which won't surprise anyone. I think he might even be in the top 10 for shots or so, Marcus Rashford. But yeah, he's just not been at it for United, which is interesting as well. Like, I've seen two very good performances for him for England this year against Scotland in a friendly and in Italy in the qualifier in the last break as well. He was really good. They are just one defeat from catastrophe all the time.
Yeah, that's how it feels.
And I think they've got some tougher fixtures coming up.
The flip side, just to add to that, though, is, like you say, when they do have a good run, because I started seeing tweets of, like, we're only 6 points behind second and this and that, and it's... I remember I saw that last season, so it feels like it's always one extreme or the other with them.
So, them last 5 wins they've had, right? You throw in the ones I don't mention.
Okay.
So they beat Brentford. They were 1-0 down going into injury time, won 2-1.
Yep.
They won 2-1 at Sheffield United.
Yep.
Dalot scored with a screamer.
Yeah.
They beat Fulham in the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 3 late wins. They beat Luton 1-0.
Yep.
And who's the other one for the last 6 they beat?
They're the ones that I've...
Is it going back to that Burnley game?
It's going back to that Burnley game, which was 23rd of September.
Is that right?
Yeah.
No, it can't be because we've got the Palace defeat in there. Or maybe it is. It could be.
Yeah, because the other Palace win was in the Cup.
So 1-0 at Burnley, and they didn't play great that night, to be honest. They got the job done, fair enough. So, with respect, you absolutely would be assuming that Manchester United would be winning them games. Yeah. This is part why people wanted the likes of Fernandes and Rashford, because those fixtures are great. Now, there's one game left of the really good run, which is this Sunday at Everton. I would suggest that doesn't feel like a good fixture for Manchester United right now.
Agree.
I think Everton are going to make that place feel like an FA Cup quarter-final. And
that's a really good analogy,
and lively.
Yep.
And I wouldn't be surprised if Manchester United got beat at Everton. Now, then following that, what's coming from afterwards, Clayton?
Newcastle away, Chelsea at home. Okay, then granted, Bournemouth at home, but then it's Liverpool away, West Ham away, Villa at home, Forest away, which we all know about Forest when they're at home. Then it's your lot.
I wouldn't count my lot in that being difficult because as I used with Clayton on one of our Suj on one of our Patreon pods last week, he's like, when they're all back, and I'm like, well, they'll all be back for Manchester United, which is just when they all piss off at AFCON and the Asian Cup, when Son, Basuma and Sargo and stuff like that. So it's like you get one load back.
But even there, like we're looking way, like we're going into January when we mention them playing you, but more
that run coming up,
yeah.
Everton away this weekend is now not an easy fixture. No. It wouldn't be for any team going there this weekend.
So
and it's not that Manchester United can't go there and win. And if they do, it'll be what they always do: win by 1 goal. That's the problem, right? Because if they'd have beat Luton 4-0, it's not to say you should beat Luton 4-0, but had they put in that sort of performance, everyone goes through the break and goes, hey, that's a bit more like what I'd expect from a Manchester United team, whereas it's, beat Luton 1-0. I did see some interesting comments from Andrews Townsend, actually, who said he said that they found them really difficult to deal with tactically in terms of interchanging of positions and stuff. Now, I was coming back from Wolves. I've not seen a lot of the game. In fact, to the extent that when I watched Match of the Day that night, I really struggled to get through the Manchester United Luton highlights. I was shattered. So not seen a lot of the game. But we expect more from them, right? It just feels like he's ticking. And at some point soon, they're going to have that really bad away day that we've seen them have a few times where they're going to get properly slapped somewhere, it feels.
And then it'll be catastrophized.
That problem with the central midfield at the moment is they're going to get badly exposed in a game soon, in my opinion. I think if you're on Bruno Fernandes or Rashford or you're on Harry Maguire this week, the chances are you're probably playing them because the fixture schedule for FPL assets is pretty bad this week. I'd be moving it on. I couldn't be making a case to be having Fernandes is over Bowens and Bumos at cheaper prices, Saka's at similar prices. I just beyond this week, I couldn't make a case for it. No. Newcastle way is a very good excuse to be moving stuff on if you've got it, I think.
Yeah, nicely done. Well, James, that's a wrap.
Cheers, pal.
One stat, well, there are a few stats from every club, and we went to specific players and tried to make it relevant.
I will ask you a couple of questions before you finish.
Go on.
Who do you think will be your Game Week 13 captain?
My Game Week 13 captain, despite what you said, I still think, excuse me, I still think it's going to be Son against Villa. Despite everything you said. I
mean, it infuses me that I'm hearing other people talk about this. I'm not in support of it. I get the theory. Villa's high line, his off the ball running is one, and timing of his runs is one of the best. Someone's got to still play it.
Yeah, I get that. I just think,
and I just don't see. Do you know what Tottenham should really use? And I mean this seriously on Sunday.
You're going to say a youngster or something, aren't you?
No, in terms of for Son.
Oh, okay.
He's Dyer.
So
Dyer's got one of the range of the pass.
Yeah. I feel like I've seen that before.
And do you know what? If Romero doesn't do it much, Mickey van der Ven doesn't have it in his locker. So ironically, with those two missing, right, use something you've got from your weakness to your advantage. And I don't think any of the midfielders particularly are going to play the pass. I think in terms of Kulusevski, I don't really see it. With Villa, it's more like it's tight and it's aggressive, and you just need to make the run from a bit deeper. Yeah. So I think that the best reference I could use is the second half Newcastle had in the opening day, where it was like Harvey Barnes particularly kept just running from late. It was like they've spread high, right, they push Wilson up with them, and okay, who's going to break and late? The beneficiary might actually be not Son, it might be Brennan Johnson.
Okay.
In terms of diagonal from right centre back to left-sided forward, that might be the beneficiary. I'm not suggesting people go and buy Brennan Johnson at this stage.
Tactically, how you see that game going.
He is a player to keep an eye on. I think in terms of that, like I don't mind it because I do think there'll still be goals in the game. We're definitely still capable of beating them, right? We're at home. Yeah. But if people are using the, Forest beat Villa, Tottenham ain't going to play like Forest played against Villa. And it doesn't mean that even with our style, with the absent players, we can't still beat them. Yeah, we can. But we also might get done over pretty badly ourselves. If I had to captain one of Son or Watkins this week,
go on. Who would you go? Watkins. You go Watkins. Okay, because I own both, so that's interesting. I hadn't really considered captaining Watkins, but
I would still, to repeat what I said at the start, I'd still think Haaland and Salah are the two best choices this week, despite the fact they're playing each other.
Yeah, we'll see. Right, I've got the questions up.
And likely transfer?
I don't know. Honestly, I feel quite happy with my team, but I do have 2 free transfers. My boy Gibbs White is still in there. He got a little assist for me. The transfer I'm thinking of right now is probably Dalot to Saliba. Like, very boring, and just roll the other one. I know we said it's not the right time to go Arsenal defensive. I just look at Dalot there. Don't really like it.
Yeah, it's fine.
So it's like,
it's fine. Use one. I think for me, most likely at the moment is now probably going to be Mitoma to Mbumo or roll it. But I think
makes sense.
I think Mbumo is probably going to go up this week before deadline, and therefore I might pull the trigger on it, which has its risk in it. But the fact I've got 8 attackers doesn't mean I can take that risk a little bit more. Because, for example, I'm probably, as it stands, part of plan benching Son in game week 14.
Oof. Okay. Strong team.
So we have set it.
Right, so I've got the questions up. There weren't too many questions. I think everyone's enjoying the international break.
Yeah, absolutely.
But before we do that, do you want to give everyone the download for the schedule this week?
Tomorrow, Money in Football on Everton's 10-point deduction. Wednesday, Luke Williams, who is one of the best Sky Fantasy football players around and one of the best content creators in our community, is joining me on the Sky Fantasy podcast. Clash of Correspondents Thursday will be an interesting one for those Sky managers as well. It's Fulham versus Wolves ahead of the Monday Night Football with Dara Curran and Bradley Parker. I will be streaming on Friday, most likely at 12 o'clock. Our Patreon content this week. If you want to support the show, www.patreon.com/Planet FPL. If you want to support the show, if you want the additional content, the podcast this week will be Patreon Q&A today, which Suj will be joining me for. Tomorrow, Clayton, Nico, and Suj are all involved, but Nico's like,
Nico's
what?
Surprise.
Yeah, you are involved. They don't know what they're getting yet, but I've got something I'm calling the debate for them tomorrow.
Okay.
Wednesday is Tottenham Arse. We'll be doing Tottenham and Arsenal. And I might be recalling on that Tottenham's own large point deduction that they got in 1994. Thursday is a quiz. Alex Trembath's doing a quiz for me on hat-tricks. And on Friday will be our Game Week 13 preview podcast. Support the show, www.patreon.com/Planet FPL.
Lovely stuff. Is that it? That's all the content? Workaholics, these guys.
There's loads more than that.
I'm joking.
That's just the podcast.
It's amazing. Right, so conscious of time, we do only have time for one.
Okay, go on.
And it's from long-term listener Amber Redmond. Are we good, Amber?
Amber's got the best questions.
Agree.
Don't disappoint me.
What do you do when you can't sleep? And before my answer, I have to ask, what's the average age of a Planet FPL listener?
What's the average age of a Planet FPL
Yeah.
listener? Nico, do we know that? Average age of a Planet FPL listener? 52. It's bullshit. It's absolutely bullshit.
But yeah, what do you
I
do?
would have said average age is probably, I'd have said mid-30s probably.
I'd go for the same, yeah. But if there's kids listening, I can't say what.
Kids, if you're listening, you shouldn't be. Get your parents' permission. I don't think we've sworn on this pod though. So
no, we haven't.
we might. Get your parents' credit card. Sign up to Patreon. Don't do that. Sign up to Patreon.
So yeah, what do you do when you can't sleep, James?
Here's me, right? I'm not good, and I don't recommend this for anybody else. But I don't go to bed until I'm shattered.
Until you're shattered. Genuinely.
Yeah, doesn't matter. If I'm sitting there at 2:30 in the morning, I'm not tired. I won't go to bed.
So you don't really have like a sleep routine or nothing, then, no?
I am abysmal.
Oh wow.
I'm abysmal.
How do you function?
I watch and read shit until I'm too tired.
Fair play.
Which is normally for this crap.
What do? I put on a lot of that white noise, that sort of stuff. I try to count backwards from 100. Try to read, but reading always just makes me more awake. I've never understood people that recommend reading because I read like football books and it just makes me more alert.
Yeah, I have an issue with I don't give my brain enough peace. So.
Well, you said the first time you got ill was because you didn't have enough work to do, right?
So I was pretty rough. From Thursday night, I felt really ill. Friday, I was quite ill. Saturday, I started feeling a bit better. But I said to you, I think it's because my brain was switching off.
Yeah.
Doesn't really. So every time I take like a proper holiday in the summer, I always get sick.
Yeah, fair play.
So, yeah, that's my own problems. So to answer Amber's question, what do you do when you don't sleep?
Count backwards from 100.
I just keep going. Or, no, I wouldn't do that.
Right, that's the wrap. Obviously, we split that into chunks. I don't actually know how long that was in duration.
Long enough.
Yeah. But, yeah. Thank you, everyone. Do you want to do the outro?
I suppose so. Be nice to each other, everyone. Play it your way. And cue music, please. Man-child.
Gosh, I need a wee.
Did you listen to the end of the differential show, by the way?
The end of it?
Yeah.
No.
I suggest you do that.
Do that on my way down.